Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for the HR series, a public webinar on how to reduce back to work stress for your employees. We appreciate the time that you're giving us this afternoon. Um, so for this afternoon, we have Zara Hernaez, who is a communications consultant and an HR practitioner, as well as a mental well-being coach. She does countless of talks with both big and small companies, large and small companies, and we're very happy to have her with us this afternoon and sharing her knowledge about how to help HR practitioners ease their employees back to in-person work. Joining her also is the GM for Infinit Care, the general manager for Infinit Care, and Ordona. Okay, so without further ado, I will transfer it now to Anne. Back over to you, Anne.
Thanks, Paula. So welcome everybody. I see familiar names in the participant list. Thank you for joining us today. Such a timely topic. For those who don't know us, no, Infinite Care, our vision is really to help employers, leaders in providing personalized mental health care for their workforce. And we do that by providing a range of mental health services. The reason we do this is because we've recognized that, it's taking a toll, right? On not just on the individuals, but also on the organizations. And if we don't do anything about it, it will really affect business outcomes as well. And it's really not something that we can separate because organizations are powered by people and people have their mental state to look after. So we know that poor mental health could affect their ability to contribute meaningfully to the workplace. And so if we don't support it, really it could snowball, and we wouldn't want to be in that position where we are just reacting already to the challenges that's happening. We could actually do more. The way we work at Infinite Care is we provide different solutions through technology. We run counseling and coaching. We run workshops and training such as this. We offer content and resources on our app and insights to HR leaders like you. Okay, so for today, as mentioned by Paula, our topic is really about how to reduce back to work stress. So when Zara and I started these mental health talks at the beginning of the pandemic, the topic, Zara, was work from home. Diba? It was about how do I manage this new way of working? But now with all the easing back into the site in-person work, some companies are doing hybrid work. It's actually causing more stress to people. It's this ongoing change that people are experiencing. And what we'd like for you to take out after this talk is really, okay, what can we do? to support our employees. So Zara here will take you through her insights. She is, as mentioned by Paula, has years in HR, doing a range of roles in HR. She's also a certified a mental health first aider and a mental well-being coach. So really, I hope you gain something from this. And for those who have questions during the talk, please use the Q&A box, okay, to type your question. You could also type it in chat, and we will spend time towards the end of the webinar to address those questions. Okay, so now I'll turn over the virtual floor to Zara.
Yan. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'll reintroduce myself. So my name is Zara, and I'm a mental health first aider. So what's a mental health first aider? It's someone who does initial intervention towards those who go through a myriad of mental health concerns like stress, anxiety, burnout, depression, schizophrenia, even. So that's what I currently do. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. In fact, I'm just like all of you listening in. I was in HR for over 25 years. I handled employee relations, organizational development, and labor. No, so it is the that's basically the most one of the more stressful divisions for the past year. No, because of the pandemic. No, the people who generally are handling the engagement of the employees and helping them adjust. So as Anne mentioned earlier, last year we were able to help people in terms of transitioning to work from home because it has been very difficult. And since December of 2020, I have been handling around 35 companies and helping them transition to the hybrid work environment. So there are different work environments that we had to come up with. No? We have, of course, the traditional, everybody going back to work. We have our incremental, and there's an option where in MWF, TTH, etc., etc. And we also have, of course, people who are totally working remotely or um, half or certain positions or permanently um, working remotely. And it has been quite an eye opener, especially for the HR people. So I'll be discussing the best practices that we have been doing in a lot of the communications we have been doing and new policies that we have been doing in the different organizations that I have worked with. So please excuse me lang if the organizations themselves, I don't put the name. No, I'm just going to give you the best practices so that we will be able to at least have an idea on how we're going to proceed with the rest of the year because October is budget season, and when it's budget season, we may need to have to ask for budget for the things that we will be requiring. Alam na alam ko yan. Mahirap po ang maging HR, truly. No? So we will be discussing returning to work with mental health in mind. And this is why I do what I do right now. I have been an HR practitioner, as I mentioned earlier, and a big chunk of um, the things that we do sometimes can be very systematic and process oriented. And more than ever this year, we realized that we were HR and we are HR for a reason. So this year, I'll do a quick recap of what has been happening. So we have been seeing an increase, of course, of alcohol and drug consumptions, even increase in suicide. And I've seen that in several organizations this year. And that's because of this pandemic and everything that it brings in, the fatigue it brings in, the confusion it brings in, the adjustments we have to go through, and of course, the environments that we have to go through. So depression has really gone high. In fact, it has multiplied threefold, 1 out of 4. So if there are 29 of us here, no, out of 4 of us is going through a mental health concern. So if you need help, you can also get in touch with me so that we can discuss and help you, no? Or your employee base. So generally, I have seen a risk the stress level is really high, especially for the children. Ergo, it also affects their parents, no? And of course, those living with seniors in the homes, or they are living alone. So it has been very challenging for these people in our organization. Unfortunately, when we do our profiles, or it's not even in our 201s, no, hindi naman natin nililista, are your parents living with you? Are you living alone? So that was something that we had to do also last year with some of the organizations. List down the people who are actually living alone, because these are the people we really need to focus on, and the managers and our leaders have to focus on these people as well, no? Kasi mahirap to be alone during the pandemic. And this is how we are looking at the Philippines, and this is the landscape. So having a mental health concern has never really been uncommon in our country. In fact, that's why, again, I do what I do, because it's very neglected, especially in the workplace. And it is something that we don't really look at. Or even I personally started my career in 1999 as HR. Invention pa ang term na employee relations. Wala pa yan. It was such a new term in the late 90s. And wellness, no, was something that we had to really think about, but we never really thought about mental health. It was all about aerobics. Aerobics pa, wala pang Zumba, no? Taibo, aerobics, mga ganon. So generally, mental health is the third most common disability actually in our country. And why is it not as loud as it is supposed to be? And that's because it is really integrated into our chronic illnesses. The stigma is very high. So recording these cases is not something that is prevalent. And lastly, no, and lastly, this is something that, of course, is not publicized because of the fact that it is actually anti-culture. No, it is very anti-culture. Kailangan ang Pinoy strong, kailangan ang Pinoy resilient. So it has been very difficult. But then again, we rolled out the mental health law, and we are having strides in terms of making sure our employee base and our country is a little bit more mental health friendly. So ito po ang ating numbers. This is a fact and this is a reality. In fact, this is even lower than um, current, no? Wala pa tayong current numbers. So that's very high. And last year was totally an eye-opener for a lot of people. And why is that? Because the pandemic brought in these unprecedented changes. And when there are changes and we have a hard time shifting to these changes, that's when we are really mentally and emotionally stretched. And when that happens, the stress scale is high, we actually go through a mental health concern. So since everyone was experiencing it, then everyone was starting to get concerned. So mental health did not um, stopped being a myth, it became a reality for a lot of people. So what you see here is the stress scale. For people who handle employee engagement, you're probably familiar with this. So this is the Harvard stress scale. And what you see here in red are the stressors of 2020. And this doesn't include, of course, the stressors basically that we go through every single day. So these are the major stressors. And this is prior to the pandemic. So if you have gone through this, or if you haven't gone through this personally, a family member or a close friend may have gone through it, and ergo, it also affects you. But when you look at it closely, you can see that there are things like change in personal habits. So when it comes to change in personal habits, you have your mask, you have your face shields, and that is a change in personal habits. And it does add to the stressors that we have in life. So this is how it has been. And that's exactly why our employee base has been pretty much frazzled. For some organizations, we have been doing, or the mental health, the wellness PH has been doing mental health surveys, and in fact, the number of employees who have been going through mental health distress has reached around 72% on an average for most organizations that we've worked with. So they're a little bit more honest right now about how they are feeling. And that's because everyone is going through it. So it's okay to say, yes, I am going through it also. So nakikita natin to, and we have been feeling it. And pretty sure HR, which has been one of the busiest departments, HR, IT, admin, the past year, has been really going through a lot of mental health distress. In fact, I have seen HR turn over the past year and it has been crazy. So, naiintindihan nyo kasi nararamdaman nyo at nadadaanan nyo rin. No? So, lahat ng tao pinagdadaanan ito. And the past year, also, this is based on 2020. No? So, basically, in 2020, we've had 25,707 participants in all of my talks, and that's just for 2020. And this is what we saw that people were going through. So, our organizations, if you are thriving or you are doing well, like we have companies who are actually doing well, the SLAs and the workloads are starting to pile up. So, with this and the work from home setup, it has really been affecting people. And we also have people who have, of course, crossed the boundaries of personal life and work life. So that has been stressful for everyone. And the meetings really do extend late. Safety on field for people who are going on field. So mataas ito. But when you look at the bottom portions, and this is the soft side of HR, no, these are the ones where we cannot really measure, but it's really your emotional support at home and in the workplace. No, people who are living alone, no social interaction with coworkers. Now more than ever, we realize that our coworkers are more than just office mates. Now, since we spend more time with these people, they're actually our emotional support. And I'm pretty sure in your organizations, you hear that also. I miss my office mates. And that's because, of course, prior to the pandemic, we were able to spend more time with them than we did with our family members. Spend more present and waking time. Ayan. To be clear, ha? Waking and present time. And of course, the last part naman, it's really our communications with our teams, no? The superiors, no? Our bosses, especially if they are of an more senior, no, it's difficult for them to really convey the right positive emotions and tonality or the malasakit through their messages, text messages, or even their online um, online presence, no? So this is not something that they are used to. So when they're not used to it, they are also uncomfortable. Sila mismo, or they're also going through a certain level of anxiety every time they have to go online because this is not something that they are used to. We still have C-suite executives who don't even know how to operate Zoom hanggang ngayon. So it is stressful for them. And when it is stressful for them, they also cannot show that energy that they used to have when it's face to face. We also have surviving organizations. Number one would be the displacement and the job security that people are really afraid of. No, this has been challenging. I am so glad I was not able to handle any displacements this year. No, naubos na yan last year at inayos-ayos in three phases, no? Retrenchments, terminations, and of course, making sure that these people who have been um, moved and displaced are also in the right mental mindset when they get out of the organization so that they can have a new start and a fresh beginning and with a positive mindset so that they will be able to cope with the pandemic. Lower compensation and benefits was something we all had to deal with to keep our companies afloat. So the financial obligations have been affected, no? And loans in the organizations, employee loans, housing loans, et cetera, all have been stopped. Alam natin yan as HR. Pinatigil ito kasi we had to keep our pockets, deep. We had to make sure that everything in the organization was accounted for and no emotional support. Home and workplace, again, this pops up and lack of communication from the organization. So the bottom portion we do address. And these are the things that really stressed us out. And when we talk about stress, generally stress is a response to a demand or threat, whether real or imagined. So when our employees go through something, and even when our bosses start saying that nasa bahay lang naman sila, yan, hear this, nasa bahay naman sila, bakit sila nasa-stress? Excuse me. No? The fact that they start thinking about these stressors, it does give them a surge of cortisol and adrenaline. And when this cortisol and adrenaline um, flow in our body from our hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal glands, which comes from our brains, then we will have um, stress hormones in our body and chronic stress because of two things, especially last year. I keep on saying last year, but generally this pandemic season. Season na siya, hindi na siya year, no? This pandemic season. Because of the fact na um, this cortisol and adrenaline generally helps us to cope with stress, but too much of this because of a long period of time and the number of stressors really does bring chronic stress. And when we have chronic stress, it does affect us and our employee base physically, emotionally, and psychologically. Ayan. So when you look at this slide, you see a bunch of um, physical and emotional and psychological effects of chronic stress. There are different ways stress comes out. No, we manifest stress in very different ways. We manifest stress very differently. So we have people who go through a difficult time in terms of concentration, difficulty sleeping, a rise of high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease. No, we have people who are actually going through irritability and fatigue. Or some people turn into toxic bosses. And we've seen that a lot this year as well. And that's because of the chronic stress. They are actually not toxic. It is a response to stress, no? Okay naman siya nung hindi pa nag-pandemic. They were perfectly fine. But now it has been very difficult. And it has been really to a response to the stressors they are going through. Unfortunately, we also have people who have had burnout, depression, anxiety disorders, PTSD, and schizophrenia because of this chronic stress. So these are the psychological effects of stress. In fact, there was a rise of resignations early this year and March, April. Ang taas ng resignations. And that's because crisis does give us a lot of crisis generally is a catalyst of change. Yeah. So crisis is a catalyst of change. So when these resignations popped up, and that's because there has been a lot of realizations internally for these employees, and even the organization has had a lot of um, realizations as well, no? And a lot of trimming of their employee base. So it goes both ways, no? So this chronic stress does bring this psychological effects and mental health effects towards people. So we want to make sure our employee base stays within the normal coping. The resilience of your organization is really dependent on the resilience of the individual employee. And we have to remember that. And when we talk about individual employee, we will have to talk about their individuality. No? Hindi na natin kayang i-profile na lang in bunches, no? In age group, in interests. Yan. We have to look at our employee base very individually now. And that is the reason most of us actually went to HR as or have HR as a vocation. I'm saying it's a vocation because generally HR is not a job. It is a vocation, and it can be a thankless vocation sometimes. No, when we talk about staying in the normal coping pathology, when they go through a level of stress, and of course there's a surge of hormones, we then have to provide them wellness um, activities or ensure that these people go through wellness. No? So wellness basically is not your Zumba, Taibo, yoga. Ano pa ba uso ngayon? Ayan na, uso-uso yan eh, no? It is not that. It is not shopping. It is making sure that they are able to allow their brains to rest. Because more than anything, stress affects our brain, not just the body. So if we are not able to do this, then they will move towards the abnormal coping pathology. No? And then if they do if they do lack sleep, and it can take very little for people to get stressed. A simple email saying, please see me on, and then walang detalye, that can put an employee into a high level of stress, right? So hindi na siya makatulog. So when they do start lacking sleep, and when we talk about sleep, it's getting sleep from 10 in the evening to 2 in the morning, because that's when our biochemicals in the brain called serotonin, dopamine, and of course our neurotransmitters like GABA. This is the time that it renews and it actually gives us a surge of these chemicals. And these chemicals are basically the contributors to happiness and motivation. So pag hindi sila makatulog na maaga because our meetings run very late, kasi nasa bahay lang naman sila, no? Then you will have employees who are going through anxiety, depression, psychosis, even, and will have to go through a myriad of medical interventions. And that's not something that we want because in the first place, hindi pa covered ang mental health sa ating mga HMOs. Alam natin yan. And when initially people in HR, basically, we started with, okay, for people lang who are going through mental health concerns, no? Pero ngayon lahat na eh. So medyo hindi natin siya ma-apply consistently, or we do not actually have the budget to cover these things. So we want to make sure that everyone, and not just people who are going through mental health concerns, everyone will continue to be mentally well, no? And when we talk about being mentally well and being mentally healthy, we will talk about the World Health Organization description of it. So someone who is mentally healthy, because we really have to define this, no? Is someone who can cope with the normal stresses of life and work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution in the community. That means our jobs, our families, no? And the organizations that we're part of. Normal stresses of life. Last year was an outlier because the stressors were not normal. Pero when you look at this description, walang sinabi na walang stress. It is never, life is never stressless. No? Hindi sinabi na somebody who is mentally healthy is somebody who is not stressed. It is somebody who can cope with these stressors. And that is something that we have to also acknowledge, know, and even educate our employees on, because it can be very challenging for the HR people. So the past year, this is what we have been doing, and my advocacy has been doing. No? So we have been doing a lot of learning sessions and doing support strategies, no? How to manage the anxiety, happiness, even grief, no? Because a lot of people have been going through grief, displacement. We even have had sessions just for COVID patients and recovered COVID patients, because there has been a lot of organizations with multiple cases. And when I talk about multiple cases, 40 or 50 in their office have had COVID. So we had to do these sessions the whole year. So if you haven't been doing these sessions, this might be something you may want to consider. No? We also have one-on-one counseling sessions, of course, accessibility to mental health support, peer counseling workshops, because again, we need our leaders to know how to counsel and be able to handle people going through mental health concerns. We even have displaced employees guidance programs, again, to help them to have be in a better mental state when they move out of the organization, and even weekly mindfulness and meditation talks. So ginagawa na natin ito currently, no? Because employees are really have really been clamoring for it the past year. So ginagawa na siya. And when we talk about employees clamoring for it the past year, we will also talk about how our employees will be when we go back to what we it is not going to be normal when we go back to the workplace, because again, as Anne mentioned, we have been going through a myriad of different hybrid working situations. We will have a new breed of employees when we come in fact, it is going to be a very different set of employees you will be facing, because these employees generally are a bit more self-sufficient. They have been working on their own for the past year. They have been working with minimal management from their managers. They have been working with their own equipment. It will be different. And why would this be different? Because last year we brought work at home. When we crossed this line, when we started merging home and the office, do not expect that when they go back to work, this will not be the same way. Now, they will be bringing home to the office as well, because this is how it is. And I'm pretty sure you guys have realized that you cannot separate the employee from the person. They are one and the same. More than ever, as HR and as managers and as leaders, we have been handling more personal concerns now more than ever. Dati, we will just be thinking about our KRAs. We will just be thinking about the performance appraisals. We will just be thinking about the SLAs that need to be fulfilled. But now we even start thinking about how that person is at home. What is their work home environment? How is their family? How is that person coping as a person, as an individual? Now more than ever. And the managers this year have been struggling with it because we were never trained to handle these concerns. It was always deemed as unprofessional to talk about our personal lives, unprofessional to talk about our personal lives with our managers, so that we would be really, um, we would have our emotions in check. In fact, emotions was not something that we even discussed at the office. But now more than ever, managers are realizing that emotions are
Hi, Zara.
hi, all right.
Okay. Okay.
What
Yeah, I think we just lost you there for a bit, but yeah, I think you're back. Okay. Hi, Zara. Okay, we'll just try to get Zara back. I think she's just undergoing some technical issues. Um, we ask for your patience while we sort this out. Hi, Zara.
We see you actually.
Okay,
hi? What happened?
I think it's just there. I think you're okay.
Yeah.
Ayan.
Okay.
So first of all, we should change how our views on how rest should be. No? So this is something that we really have learned as individuals, as people, but also as HR. Right now, we are collectively feeling the pains of work from home still, and feeling the pains of blurring the lines of personal and work life. So we want to make sure that our employees also understand that work-life balance is a myth. Yeah. We hear this a lot. Again, hindi ko alam kung sino nag-coin nito. This was, again, coined in the early 2000s, no? Work-life balance. Work-life balance, I'm sorry to say, is a myth. And I literally do say this to the people that I counsel. Work-life balance means balancing yourself. Because when you are home, there's stress. When you are at work, there is stress. Clearly, when we were pre-pandemic, people used to say, I want to spend more time at home. Now that there has been a pandemic and they're home, they want to go back to work. So it's so clear that we are dealing with one person. It's so clear that we are dealing with stress and not the situation, not their workload, not the situation that they are in. So we want to make sure that they do understand that work-life balance means balancing yourself, not the work that you have, but making sure that you are able to handle the stressors. And stressors means, again, whether real or imagined. And more often than not, it is not the job that stresses us out. It is the things, the thoughts, and the emotions that come with the negative thoughts and emotions that come with the stressors. You want to make sure that they are able to balance that out. And that's exactly why we do weekly mindfulness and meditation um, sessions with in some companies. No? So how do we how do we address this and how do we communicate this? Number one, we want to make sure that recognizing stress is key. They are able to recognize, and you are able to recognize and acknowledge that you are going through stress. Second, making sure that people know that stress is not a weakness. It's you being human. And we hear this a lot in organizations as well. Bakit siya nasa stress? Konti nga lang yan eh. Ha? Sa panahon ko, doble-doble ang trabaho, natutulog pa kami sa opisina. That is not stress. So stress is not a weakness. It is the human being responding to stressors. It is the human response to stressors. This has to be very clear. Stress and mental health concerns, these are human responses. Lastly, also help them and also see employees and people also see how they manifest stress. So, are these feelings, reactions, and actions of this person a response to stress? Are my feelings, reactions, and actions a response to stress? Sometimes we do tend to forget this because we are of course looking at our policies, no? So sometimes when we talk about employees and we start assessing them, we want to make sure that we take in consideration this person's mental and emotional state and even look at their personal state as well, no? When we bring in a new breed of employees, we also are required to have a new breed of leaders. When we talk about a new breed of leaders, these are leaders that are high in compassion, courage, moving forward with, even if there's fear involved, leaders who are willing to be vulnerable, leaders that are high in empathy and high in communication skills. In our current bench, konti lang to. Konti lang sila. We do have skilled, efficient leaders and managers, but a lot of the time they are also not as high in empathy and compassion, courage, and vulnerability. And that is totally understandable because the brain and the heart and emotions, those things, especially it's psyche, alam niyo to, pag mataas ang affect, no? Pag mataas ang intellect, mababa ang affect. So we want to make sure that we are honing this and teaching this as a skill. Treat it as um, treat communicating remotely as a skill, especially for leaders. No, this is how we really want to build our leadership bench moving forward. Kasi medyo nahihirapan ang mga tao, and based again on feedback and on based on 32,000 employees, they really need to make sure that they work on tone of voice or the words that they use and real-time recognition and feedback. Again, hindi naman to practice too much. And we have been focusing on this the past year, no? And of course, if internal communication sits in HR, because sometimes it does sit in HR, sometimes it sits in Corpcom, no? Creating supportive dialogues and spills is something that we really need to push in the organization. So again, we are retooling our leaders because we are dealing with a new breed of employees. We have employees who are pretty much self sufficient and are used to working on their own now. They don't need managers, they need leaders who will inspire them to stay. and inspire them to keep going. So people who used to say ganun talaga, it is what it is, which is pretty common, no? We will have to teach them to say things differently, like how can I be helpful, how are you feeling about this, what can I do to support you, which is of course not something that they are used to. So we have to make sure as HR, we will be able to tool them. Secondly, we will be able to educate them so that they will be able to embrace this new kind of leadership style. No? So leadership style siya. No? At the same time, it's also um, making them better people. Because somebody or a leader who says ganon talaga actually is speaking from a place of fear. Kasi hindi rin naman niya alam. So, ganon talaga na lang ang ating answer. HR has been one of the most stressed departments in the past year. No? Again, HR, admin, IT has been the most stressed the past year. So we want to make sure that we're also able to revisit our HR role. When we talk about revisiting our HR role, it's really going back to why we started our HR journey in the first place. Most HR practitioners are psychology graduates. Sometime in your life, naisip mo that I want to know more about the human being and how they think and how I can help and how I can understand them better. If you were not an HR, if you're an HR practitioner who is not a psych graduate, more often than not, when you were interviewed for the role, ang sinabi mo, isa akong people person. Yan. So ilabas natin ang ating pagiging people person, ang ating pagiging psych. Because the current focus of human resources in the past, say 15 years has really been systems processes. Even in org dev, it has stopped being interventions. It has become more metrics driven. So ibalik natin ang humanity to human resources. And we will revisit our roles. So this past year, this is how some organizations have been revisiting their roles. Ayan. So this is just for you to uh, benchmark on. And you can pick and choose depending on what is applicable to my company, what can I advocate in my organization, ano ang may budget, ano ang walang budget. But the general header for this is really reboarding family. We will have to really look at our organization and our employee base now as family, because again, they will be bringing their personal life to the office the same way we brought the office to their homes. Why am I calling it reboarding? Because just like our onboarding packages, no? Simula na ito ng bagong organization. We may come back to the same organization when we go back to work, and at the same workplace, but it's going to be a very different environment with the very different people with the very different mindsets. So for the recruitment side, this is how organizations have metamorphized or changed the past year. So we've been helping them with creating different programs. No? So for recruitment, a lot of the consideration is really vicinity to the workplace. Apart from the fact that it is safer for the employees who are very much concerned of the commute to the office and exposure to COVID, making sure that they are nearer to the workplace also allows them to be nearer to their homes where they are also focused. Again, dadalhin na nila ang kanilang thoughts of family kasi naging close tayo during this pandemic to our families, di ba? So they want to make sure that they are also nearer, no? Apart from it being safer. Second, a lot of the employees who have resigned are looking for organizations who have alignment in terms of values. So every day I counsel people who want to resign. I do encourage them to stay, but once in a while, I really do bump into one or two whose values and personal values are not aligned with the organization that they are in. And thus, creates a conflict in them. So every day they want to make sure that who they are, especially for our millennials and Gen Z, they are looking for a purpose. So it has to be aligned with the mission, vision, and culture versus the compensation and benefits is top of mind. Now they know that being in a mentally supportive culture is better for them versus having a culture or having an organization with higher compensation and benefits. So there has been an influx of resignation, and there has been an influx of organizations hiring people based on their alignment to values. Lastly, no, of course, in terms to recruitment, there has been a discussion on safety protocols, vaccinations as well, with consideration of confidentiality. Kasi bawal naman na sabihin na um, we only hire people who have been vaccinated, no? So that we have our anti-discrimination laws for that. But this is something that's already being discussed even in the hiring process, no? And even when we do the reboarding, who has had their vaccinations, who have not had their vaccinations. So for compensation and benefits, of course, flexibility on work schedule options, opening up ourselves to communicating and getting feedback in terms of the work schedule options with sensitivity to childcare and senior care situations. We have support in digital mobile tools as well, laptops, Wi-Fi allowance, paid online meeting accounts, and even um, sorry, cloud, no, cloud storage, because of the fact that this actually does cost the employees. So the rental for the buildings that they used to occupy is now shifted to these things, no, and sorry, and shuttling to and from work base is something that is already included in the compensation and benefits packages, no? And accessibility to basic services as well at work bases. So there are companies right now that have their um, small groceries within the compound, because I work with plants as well. So they have small groceries. So again, minimal ang ating travel. Make sure that they are just home or at work to minimize exposure to COVID. And then vaccine incentives. This is something that is very common nowadays. So we are incentivizing people who are getting their vaccines, or we are incentivized. There's even vaccine. Ito ang top of mind, these are the top three that I have seen: vaccine bonus, vaccine as incentives, vaccine bonus, vaccine leave, and vaccine after vaccine leave. Yeah. Yung after vaccine recovery leave. Ayan. So these are parts of the compensation and benefits packages that people are starting to really integrate into, no? And availability of mental health services like counseling, HMO coverage, and as well as learning sessions and coaching like this, and individualized self-care kits. Pag sinabing individualized, because again, wellness is different for everyone, no? And um, relaxation is not a one size fits all. So it will not work anymore na there are general Zumba classes. Now people have a menu, parang ating cafeteria menu style benefits, cafeteria benefits, no? There's a menu already of self-care. If some people prefer scented candles, essential oils, blah blah blah, then they choose this. If they prefer a certain thing, so it's very individualized right now. And COVID employee loans. Now, people who are going through COVID, or family members, if you want to extend it to family members. No? In terms of policies, we also have, we really highly encourage back to basics. So kung ano ang inilaan at binigay ng ating Department of Labor na oras, yan lang rin ang ating gagawin. So we want to make sure that we practice again our 8-hour work. wish ko lang, no, 8-hour work schedules, and really implement our 15-minute break in the morning, 1 hour lunch break, and 15-minute break in the afternoon. So really want to focus on going back to these policies, looking at them clearly and say, you know what, this is what is meant to be done in the first place, gawin natin ito. So, hindi naman kailangan may budget tayo sa lahat. There are some practices and there are some programs that are already in place. We really just have to push and tell our leaders, our managers, our bosses even, that we have to make sure that these are back. So these are back in place, no? Na-disrupt lang tayo ng sandali, ibalik natin ito. At the same time, there are practices that we used to do prior to the pandemic, like no meeting Wednesdays, ayan, no meeting Tuesdays, that we used to do pre-pandemic. So you can have no Zoom meeting Wednesdays, no Zoom meeting Thursdays, etc., etc. So review your current programs and review your basic programs and just realign it. Um, we also have had a lot of review. Oh my, I had to review so many policies as well this year because again, medyo backwards ang ibang company. It's very old school. So want to review policies on in terms of professionalism and work behavior because of the fact that we will still have people working from home. We want to check on what professionalism is about. Kung dadalhin natin kung ang mga anak nila ay magulo sa likod, is that not professional? If the employee is not wearing their long sleeves, because there are still companies who actually require the office attire and blazer, no? For every time there's an internal meeting in the heat without air conditioning, which is totally impractical, right? So we want to make sure that we review our policies, and on professionalism. Ano ba talaga ang professional? Is it behavior, professional behavior, or is it professional how we look? Because we have people who have blazers on, but generally naka-shorts naman sila. So we want to make sure that we review these things again because moving forward, as we do our performance reviews, as our bosses will start looking at these things, this will be part of their performance appraisals. No, we have our policies on mental health leaves, vaccine recovery leaves, as I mentioned earlier, and really making sure that our policies on confidentiality and anti-discrimination are reviewed. So we will have to include mental health, no? Those who are COVID infected, those who have been vaccinated or not vaccinated or choose not to be vaccinated because that is their body. So my body, my rules that will constantly still apply. So we have organizations who say, oh, bawal ma-promote kung hindi na vaccinate. Meron tayo dyan. I also have sometimes, last year, I also got a call from a CEO who actually asked me kung sino yung mga employees going through mental health concerns and depression in their organizations. And of course, we want to make sure that we protect these people as well, no? So we do not encourage that. Sabihin ko na lang sa inyo kasi hindi ko naman talaga siya sasabihin, no? That's the nice thing about not being part of the organization. We also have to make sure that we check on how things are. Are we a result-oriented organization? Or are we a time-based organization? So that has been quite a struggle the past year as well, no? Because we still have organizations. So time in and time out. Paano kaya niya ito time in and time out? So this will save you as a department, as an organization, a lot of time if we really just focus on it being result oriented versus time based because it's um very hard to document. And of course, our hoteling guidelines, no, how we will be working remotely. In terms of training, as I said earlier, there has been a slew of leadership trainings the past year that focus on empathy, compassion, holding supportive conversations, and empathetic communication. So these are the things that I've been running. And most of the time, the organizations that do tap me to do these things for them, generally they ask me to do it for their um, senior managers and up or their managers and up. So their senior management teams. But we also do coaching and counseling system. So our boss A will be the coach or mental health coach or peer counselor for team B, while team boss B will be the peer counselor coach for team A. And we do these systems because we want to make sure that there is no conflict of interest. And again, where rubber meets the road, there's always friction. Lastly, you really do not want to tell your boss that he is the problem, nah? Especially since they're the ones who are doing our performance appraisal. So we do create a system for it to make sure that everything is running smoothly, but people are supported. Lastly, when we talk about supporting people, we also want to make sure that we start changing the culture already. When I talk about culture, we are so used to making sure that our employees have grit. Uh, Grit. Employees are stretched. Employees are resilient. In fact, nasa ano talaga yan, no? Sa mission vision. But we want to make sure that we have employees who are mentally supported because resiliency again is dependent on them individually, mentally, physically, and emotionally. So we want to make sure that these are organizations that are empathy driven and compassionate. And we will continuously communicate mental health and wellness and support services within the organization to avoid people from shying away from asking for help. So, generally, we want to make sure that people understand that it is all about connection and not location. No? So, even if they are remotely working half of the time, it's really all about the connection. How will you bring that that corporate culture into their homes as well, no? When I talk about all of these things, this is really to make sure that a work environment that supports mental health and well-being is a permanent culture. Mental health should be something as normal as talking about mental health should be something as normal as an employee saying na pupunta akong clinic, masakit ang aking ngipin. Nobody bothers to really check on that employee kasi pumunta siya doon, di ba? It's dead ma. Nobody. And that's because mental health generally having a mental health disorder or having a mental health concern, it is a diagnosable illness, just like your physical illnesses. So, hindi siya pwedeng i-separate mo sa mga physical illnesses that we are concerned about when it comes to our employees. No, we want to make sure that it goes hand in hand. Hindi po to fad. This is not a fad. This is not a trend. This is the human body with human responses. So, we want to make sure that we are able to help that person and really make sure that humanity is brought back into our HR roles. When we talk about HR, napakahirap. I know. It's a very thin line between friend ko ba siya or employee lang. Every day we think about that. And it is so challenging to want to help people because HR people generally have high empathy and at the same time be struggling ourselves. So make sure that as HR practitioners, make sure that you fill your cup. When we talk about the employee family or organizational family, HR will always be deemed as the mother. Mothers have to fill their cup because we have to make sure that we are there for the employee base. So prioritize self love. Your priority should always be how you feel inside as an HR practitioner. You cannot give anything that's not there. Pag tayo ay cranky, ilalabas rin natin yan sa mga employees natin. And we will not be able to talk to them and counsel them the proper way. No? The same way na sometimes when we're doing policies, minsan our own personal interests ang pinag-iisipan natin, no? Pag ano tayo, honest na lang tayo. Minsan iniisip ko rin naman, makikinabang rin ako dito, no? So there are times that we cannot be objective, and that's because of course meron rin kulang sa atin. So prioritize yourself as HR. Kailangan na kailangan kayo at this point in time, no? Make sure that we are able to observe what's going on, be very objective about it, and not absorb the feelings of the employee base as well, because it can be very challenging. Lastly, this year, everyone decided to look at HR and say, what will we do now? Even our CEOs. No? We want to make sure that you also know that giving help also means learning to ask for help. Human resources is not alone. You have the other departments to help you if you ask for their help. You should never forget that your role is a very important one. Do not diminish your role. Napaka-importante ng HR ngayon, no? So, okay lang humingi ng tulong sa marketing when it comes to the communications. Okay lang i-raise ang issue sa ating mga mancom. Okay lang manghingi ng tulong sa mga admin pag kailangan natin ng tulong. Kasi minsan, nadyajahe tayo. So, giving help also means learning to ask for help. So, as HR practitioners, it has been challenging for everyone, but saludo ako sa inyong lahat for doing all of this. This is a very thankless vocation, no? And I'm still doing it. But it is one of the more fulfilling roles in an organization because you really do affect people, not just at the office, but at home and who they are. You are really honing them as individuals and as people. So if you do want help, you can also get in touch with me through the Wellness PH on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram. So pag meron tayong tanong, pwede rin tayong magtanong right now. Huh?
Sarah, thanks so much. It has been very detailed and comprehensive, no? And I like that you touched, how what happened prior, what are the stress reactions that people are experiencing, and then those things that they've been experiencing the past few months, they're gonna bring it to work. So you're right, you cannot separate really the person from the employee because they're gonna bring it. So I guess this what I took away from your talk is when we are rewarding them, right? We have to take into consideration that they're coming in now with all of these experiences and all of these fears and concerns, and it cannot be business as usual. And thanks for that. That was my own takeaway. We do have a few questions here. I think this is in the context of HR being the takbuhan ng mga problema ng mga tao, right? So the questions are, what if someone is afraid to make a new start? What would be the best mindset to encourage that person? Or maybe afraid to return as well, no? Or afraid to start something new. How do you address that?
Okay, this is a very, I am not very, I don't get the question.
Yeah, no, so
Afraid to make a new, Luella, ito lang ang tanong.
maybe
Afraid to make a new start kasi
hang on,
lilipat ka ng
Luella, are you
bagong
are
company?
you okay if you can hang on, I'll give you microphone privileges.
Sure.
There you go.
Hi, everyone. Good morning.
Hi.
Very nice. All right, Luella. You ask your question directly na lang. Yan.
Yeah, sure. No worries. Yeah, the question is from, since of course HR is a people support as well to the organization. So since this pandemic, we are just thinking that this will be temporary, right? And those who are working at home will be going back to to the office eventually once the pandemic has been done. So most of our, most of the employees that we find on the survey, that they are afraid to start a new setup, like, this
Yeah.
new setup, a new beginning, because they will be transitioned to another setup in the workplace. So what would be the best mindset or approach to these employees so that they will be encouraged to have a positive positive thinking or mindset on this new start, like new beginnings on the transition or after the transition?
Okay, fear will always be there. Fear because, of course, our lives has been threatened. Let's be real about it. No, our lives were really threatened and is still threatened. So the fear will always be there. Acknowledge that the fear is there. And when you're talking about facing these fears, facts is your biggest your biggest kakampi, Luella. So
Mm-hmm.
when you're starting to assure these people, you cannot just really go towards the emotions and say, it's going to be okay. How will it be okay? And then give them a list of facts. Facts will be your biggest tool. So how is the office safe? Why is this setup a better setup in terms of safety for you? No, so minimal number of hours at work, and then the rest of the time you are at the office. 'Cause I don't know what your hybrid working setup is right now, but generally, facts will be the only thing that can alleviate that fear. Be very transparent about them and about why you are doing this, because it's the only way you will be able to convince them if you are able to alleviate that fear. Hindi talaga siya easy. You cannot just go. It's not like pre-pandemic when we used to have our team buildings and yay, go, 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 new culture, rise to the occasion, yung mga ganon. Hindi na,
Correct. Agree.
okay? Takot na ang ating, fear for our lives na ang ating fini-face ngayon. It is not a matter of numbers or getting our targets. It is fear for their lives and fear for the lives of their family members. So facts will be how we will have to deal with it.
All right, agree. Thank you, Miss Sarah, for that. So, yep, that
Mhm.
is a good note for us that in explaining to our people, it is also best to support our points using the facts and
Yeah.
their benefits that they could take advantage of. Thank you, Miss Sarah, for that.
Oh,
And
you're
thank you,
welcome.
Luella, for being so engaged. We have a couple of questions by in the Q&A. So there's a question on how is change management still relevant nowadays, considering we're still going through the pandemic.
Ah, actually, okay. Change management interventions in terms of communication is something that dapat kayo ang busy ngayon.
Mm.
Because the change management tools, even the change management OD tools that you have, those are the ones that you will use right now more than ever. It's really translating these things. When Anne and I did our first um, few talks, and
Mm.
when I did my talks last year in terms of work from home, we really used the McKinsey 7S, which is an HR tool for change management, which I used at work. So this is something that we had to teach people. How will we really look at ourselves? So it is of great use right now. Your change management communication plan is also something that you can translate and use in terms of reboarding your employee base.
Mm. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
It's even more relevant because
Even
people
more
are living
relevant.
through the
Uh-uh.
changes now, and mas mabilis ang changes at the moment, I think,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Oo. Okay, there's another question here. Oh, paano naman kung yung HR ang may problem, Zara? Who is the best person to talk to, especially if their issue is their boss?
Correct. Guys, I wasn't joking when I saw there's a very high turnover of HR. Sobrang taas. Um, that's exactly why we set up processes. counseling processes and systems in other organizations. So we do assign a different boss to handle a different team, and a different team to have their coaching and counseling with another boss. For one organization, the head of finance was the counselor and coach for HR. So you can do a similar concern. Or worst comes to yet, Miss Anonymous attendee, you can also get in touch with me if you want to talk.
Yeah.
Uh-uh.
Yeah, that's the reason why there are party partners like us as
Correct.
well, right?
If you
Because
have an infinite care in your organization, a lot of these things will
mm,
be out of your hair, and you can proceed to just focus on knowing your people and making sure that your people are safe
right.
and efficiently and working productively.
There's a question here in the chat. First of all, thank you for the very interesting and inspiring talk. May I know what suggestion you can give managers on how to continue supporting the well-being of their teams who are still working from home?
Mm-mm,
So, daily inspirational messages, monthly performance and team calls are already being done to
mm-mm,
support their workload and schedules. But how do you keep them inspired and motivated to work from home in the absence of face-to-face and physical interaction? Okay, the second part of the question is you also mentioned that compassion, courage, empathy, vulnerability, important factor for leaders. Do you think it will also help promote a fearless organization where employees feel secure in the new workplace? I think let's first part of the question is how do you continue to support those who are
yeah,
still working from home in the
yeah.
absence of face to face? The second part is all about the leaders.
Yeah, okay. I'm so glad you answered that question, and thank you for doing that for your employee base. Apparently, you are already doing a lot, no? So that really helps, the daily inspirational messages, etc., etc. Ang tanong dyan would be consistency, no? So when we talk about consistency, consistency really brings sincerity. So in as much as we do this and we ask our leaders to do it, how consistent are they when they are doing it? Because some actually just say, oh, napadala ko, pero hindi. So consistency, but generally, not only does it bring sincerity, it builds the trust between your employee base and the connection. And that's the important thing. No? So consistency na lang ang kulang. So kailangan it is really done consistently. No? So I'm glad you're doing it. Consistently doing it is also something that you will have to know, because that's the only way we can create that bond and that connection. No?
Mm-mm.
So kung ginagawa na siya, that's a good way for
Mm-mm.
our... Ang tanong dyan, how are you supporting these bosses? Kasi mauubusan rin sila ng inspirational messages, no?
Mm. Mm-mm. Right.
So para our bosses will have a constant surge of messages, we also have to enrich their lives and also help them in terms of their personal growth. No, so it can be, and this is something that I did for one organization. We really had a portal just for managers, and these are, kumbaga, para siyang didake for managers. And that's where they will get their insights and then pass it on. So it's really a portal just for them to constantly also inspire them. So inspired managers also inspire other people. So secondly, how do you keep them? Okay.
The second part was about leaders, right? That you mentioned that compassion, courage, empathy, and vulnerability are important factors for leaders. I
Mm-mm.
think this will promote a fearless organization where
Of
employees
course.
feel secure.
Of course. Being compassionate, high in empathy and vulnerability, not only does not promote a weak leadership, it actually strengthens the people under them, because they will learn from these vulnerabilities as well. You are building a team. A team has to have a shared experience. A team has to have knowledge of other people's weaknesses as well, so that they can support each other. So you're not talking about a team which is just led by a manager. You are talking about a team na kayong lahat na ang nagtutulungan. So it does really help you have a fearless organization. Kasi kayong lahat ang nagtutulungan niyo. Mahirap kasi pag isa lang ang strong, di ba? Mahirap yan. In fact, and I saw this in one organization because again, since nakasalalay lahat sa managers nila, and of course, the manager wanted to be strong. It's very typical micromanaging, no? The moment that person also got sick, wala rin. Nahirapan rin sila. They had to abolish and disintegrate an entire department. So once a manager is actually more vulnerable and compassionate towards these people, the compassion builds, of course, that bond, no, and that connection. But really opening up about vulnerabilities as well, it empowers people to help him. And it also empowers people to open up about their vulnerabilities. So kayong lahat, alam nyo ang mga weaknesses. Ergo, alam mo kung kailangan ng more strength in a certain portion of their lives or of their workload. No? So it will really do. It will
Yeah.
help them.
Yeah. Very nice. Okay, I think we'll answer one more question, Zara. This is actually a very personal question. But you talked about vulnerability, so I think
Mm-mm.
thank you for this person's vulnerability. So she currently struggling with anxiety and dealing with emotional and mental stress.
Mm.
Father passed away this year,
Mhm.
got
Mhm.
COVID, now juggling with work and family problems. So kahit
Mm.
pagod ako emotionally, mentally, I just don't have time to stop for a while.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
So honestly, really tired, affecting
Mm-mm.
work now. Planning to take a leave, but I don't know how. If my only reason is because my sanity is in question.
Okay. I like that you said that I don't know how if my only reason is because my sanity is in question now. But so okay, biglang. This is all I can share to you. I'm glad that you were able to acknowledge that you are going through this and it is difficult. But with that acknowledgement of you going through all this, which is, by the way, not easy, it is very difficult. I will tell you that the least of your concerns is people thinking that you are not going in a right state of mind. Unahin mo ang sarili mo. Unahin mo ang sarili mo because your family needs you. More than the job that you are thinking about, it is your family that you have to think about because that's exactly why you work anyway. People thinking that there is a level of weakness in your sanity is the least and should be the least of your concerns. So, yes, take that leave. And when you take that leave, make sure that it is a mental health leave. Ergo, turn off your phone, turn off your laptop. You are the most important thing right now. Your strength is the most important thing for your family and your husband. So the least of your concerns is people thinking that your sanity is not 100%. No? Unahin mo sila, ang pamilya mo. Hindi yung mga iniisip ng ibang tao. At
Mm.
iniisip because you're afraid that they will judge you. So take that leave.
Yeah.
Take that leave.
Yeah. Right. Give yourself permission to take a break. I mean, you're gonna say that actually, right? To if someone approaches you with that same problem, what will you tell that person? I was just right. Diba, Z?
Yeah, you're just
Yeah.
gonna tell them anyway, mag-leave ka. Take your
Oh,
own advice.
exactly.
Secondly, anong paki mo sa sasabihin ng ibang tao?
Mm, mm.
So I had to double check because I might not be proper in my answer, but I will really tell you guys. The least of your concerns is what other people will say.
Yeah.
What is my and I know this as HR. Okay, I handled labor and employee relations for mga 20 years.
Mm,
It's so hard na kailangan ikaw ang epitome of perfect.
mm.
At yan ang HR. Kasi ikaw ang nagsisita eh. Pag sinabing 2 inches lang ang heels, kailangan 2 inches ang heels mo. Pag sobra ng 2 inches or naka-flats ka, that's such a big deal. Si HR nga eh. At this point in time, really, unahin mo ang self mo. Don't allow yourselves to be human.
Right. Yeah. Very good reminder. Zara, do you still have time for two more questions?
Sure.
Okay. So the first is, what of those employees who are unwilling to come into the office, even if it's just in once or twice a week, intermittent, either with claims of being afraid for others in their household or their
Uh-huh.
own fear? Yeah, they are or may not be the caregivers. So we need to be compassionate, but also fair to all. So how do you recommend dealing with employees who refuse to get a vaccine, to come to work? What's the right way to manage?
Okay. It is challenging because again, we're looking at it na, okay, we will have to look at things individually. Diba? What is their situation? Totoo ba na merong comorbidity siya? Nasa records naman natin yan. Secondly, um, they're saying that they do not have a helper, they do not have a maid. We will have to. There are different circumstances. Again, at this point in time, we want to look at things very individually. So parity and equanimity among or employees may be different because we have to treat them very differently right now. But you can encourage them. But again, just like the question earlier, na you will have to tell them that these are the facts. These are the safety measures at the office. And of course, we have to make sure that these are followed. Secondly, how do we encourage them to take their vaccines? Napaka-importante yun. It will really alleviate like 80% of their fear if they are vaccinated. So how do we encourage them? We can set up the vaccine place at the office or even encourage them to bring their family members to have their vaccines or even have shot ito. This is what other people are doing. Shina-shuttle sila to the vaccine place and ina-allow sila ng vaccine recovery leaves. So we have to make sure that that fear is alleviated and we have to make sure that facts are supporting it, the
Mm.
safety measures at work, and of course, the vaccines.
Mm. I think the last question is also related. People who don't believe in the guidelines and are still paranoid, right? So
Mm-mm.
there are really people like that. How do you manage people who really refuse to understand the guidelines?
So yeah, I will be real about it. There are a lot of people who prefer to work at home already.
Mm. Mm.
So kung marami ang percentage of people who actually want to work at home and it is still working for your organization, you might want to think about that. Kasi I'm sure kayo rin, ang sarap ng feeling na magtatrabaho kayo, yung anak mo nasa kabilang room lang, di ba? New breed of employees, guys. This
Mm.
is how it's gonna be. So you will have to address that early. Na parang, okay, it seems like we are working well. Our numbers at the bottom line is working well, that we're doing this 50-50% thing. Maybe we want to do this permanently because there are organizations who are doing it permanently already and plan to do it permanently because it saves them from the building space, rentals, etc. So that might be something you want to check on.
Mm.
However, there are also people who are not in the best ideal home situation who prefer to go to work. At na-experience nyo rin to last year na even if you ask people to stay, there are people who actually go to the office. So if again, you will have to look at your employee base and consult them.
Mm.
Kasi if most of the people want to work at home and it is working anyway, if we look at the bottom line and it is working anyway, why not? That might
Mm.
be something you want to propose.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Thank you, Zara. I think overall this has been an enlightening talk. I think my 2 cents as well is that this will not end yet. And so we will continue to be having this conversation really until we're out of the woods, right? And then another set of challenges will come. So I think it's good that you are here listening to this, and I hope you go back to your workplaces as well, thinking of how else we can support ourselves and support the employees that are under your care. So there, thank you so much, Zara. Anything else that you'd like to share before I wrap it up and end?
Ayan. So thank you so much, everyone. Again, you can get in touch with me on the Wellness PH if you have any questions or if your organization or you want help or family members or friends want help. So what's the Wellness PH? It's really a safe space for people to discuss mental health concerns. And at the same time, um, it is a place where we help underprivileged individuals who cannot afford mental health um, medical intervention and medication. No? So we are working on a donation basis. So your organization can give from zero to whatever it can afford. Mahirap po kumanap ng budget mga bagay-bagay na ito. But the money will go to underprivileged individuals who can't afford your psychiatrist, psychologist, and even medication. So that's really my mental health advocacy, Susanna. We are able to help our employee base. No, nakasalalay not only your organization but our country and our economy on you
Yeah.
guys. Yeah, pressure, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it's all about helping each other, right? So thank you, Zara. And thank you for those who've attended and who've taken the time to listen to us this afternoon. So again, we're Infinite Care. If you have more questions, you can go to infinitecare.co. Paula has put in an evaluation form as well. It would really help us if you fill that up so we could learn how best to improve and if there are other topics that we will tackle in the next months. Lastly, do watch out for announcements. We are doing this HR series on a monthly basis, tackling topics that are relevant to mental health in the workplace. So we look forward to seeing you again in our future events. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good afternoon and please stay safe. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll probably just wait now, Pao, until people log out so that they can still
Yeah.
have access